All right. Well, first and foremost, 70s rock and romance cruisers, welcome. So glad to see all of you who've been with us in the past and to welcome a handful of you who are new to 70s rock and romance. And if you snuck in from another cruise or StarVista Live member of our family, let's say, glad to have you as well. I am Jason Venner, your virtual cruise host. And for those of you that have sailed with us on one of the number of cruises that StarVista Live produces, you've probably sailed with us, me at some point as well. So welcome. Now, this event right here, we had talked to a lot of folks, and what we were finding is that as Alan and Mike, who I'm introducing to you here in just a moment, create these cruises and build these cruises and come up with these ideas and produce these wonderful, wonderful events, we find a lot of people just don't really understand from the top down what these charters are. So we thought a great opportunity with some of the changes coming up and some of the trials and tribulations we're all facing to get these two gentlemen with us to have a little chat. So next to me, I have Alan Rubens. Alan is a senior vice president and executive producer here of the 70s Rock and Romance Cruise. Alan, how are you, sir?
Very good, Jason. How you doing?
Excellent, sir. Excellent. Thank you for being with us. And we also have Mike Jason, who is senior vice president as well, and executive producer of a handful of StarVista Live cruises. Mike, glad to have you with us as well, sir.
Thank you, Jason. Glad to be here.
So if you don't mind, gentlemen, let's start with something that just, we ask guests, as you know, we've done a few of these to this point, we ask guests to submit questions. And so I guess before we go anywhere, I'd like to say to guests, all of you watching that submitted a question, thank you very much for taking the time. For those of you that didn't submit a question, just tuning in, glad to have you. For a lot of people, there were some very, very personal and specific questions. So please understand, we're not ducking or dodging any questions. All of the questions you submitted to us will be relayed to the hospitality team that works with StarVista Live, known as CTS. Many of you know them, of course, intimately. You've worked with them many, many times booking your cruises. And we'll make sure we go through those lists because a lot of these questions aren't necessarily group discussion comments. They're very specific to you individually. And many of you had similar thought patterns, so we'll lump them together and do some kind of general comments. So positive. I've got to say, I love the rock and romance crowd. Just a wonderfully positive, forward-looking, excited crowd as always. And your questions reflected that. So Mike and Alan, let's start with something very simple, or actually not simple in everyone's eyes, but maybe we view it as simple. What is the process in building what we know as a charter? Let's talk about rock and romance. From concept to actually getting the charter on the water, tell us a little bit about the process.
Well, I'll start and then I'll toss it to Alan. The first year, the first time you cruise, it's probably a 2.5 year process. You come up with the idea, you sketch out what kind of artist you'd want, you look at whether the music can be tied together in a kind of a special feeling and what kind of an event you can put on. Certainly after the first year, it gets a little bit easier in that you're in somewhat of a routine. And so after that first year, we work about 20 months out. About 20 months through our sail date, I approach the charter companies and I look for a particular week that we want. And sometimes, there are competitors that are out there. We like to have a week where we have the week before us completely open so we can load material on. That's important too. So yeah. Good.
Sorry, Mike, before you go too far, a question. I don't know that people understand sometimes how many charter companies and charters there are out there. Do you have a rough number as to how many cruises go out a year, rough, give or take?
There are about 15 or 20 companies that I know of that kind of do what we do. And even if it's not the exact same kind of a cruise, it is a cruise where they take the charter for a full week and they sail. And so there are 2 or 3 people that look for January through March on Celebrity, for example. And so I need to go every year. We go a little earlier, and they try and go earlier, then I go earlier than them, and we try to get our week. So we try and get a week that we want. We try and get the week before open so we can load material in. There's lots of competition, and the companies are usually available January to middle of April. So that's the time frame we're working. And then they relocate the ships to other parts of the world. So that's one of the reasons why we don't go beyond the end of March, beginning of April. Once I get the week and once I get a pretty good sense of that we can do the license with the charter company, I start to try and figure out what the ports might be. You figure out what ports we haven't been to before. Lots of times you'll have an artist that fly in and out, and so you want a big midpoint with a great airport. So that becomes an important characteristic as well. But all of this is reduced down to a contract. And so one of the things I think, we've not explained well enough to folks, once I sign that contract, lots of things can change, but only if the ship wants to change them. I have that week, I have that that ship,
Yeah.
I have those 2,000 rooms and I bought them. I own them, whether no one's on or everyone's on, we're sailing that week, unless the charter company agrees to do something special with us. And by that, I mean moving it, and which happened in this case, but very, very unusual. So it's formal.
And if you don't mind, when you say contract, you are basically a guest of you're a guest of the cruise line. You're just buying a lot of rooms instead of a room.
That's right. Our relationship is guest. So we've bought all the rooms, and then they really control the ship. They control all the staffing and certainly the sailing and what ports you can go to and all the onboard and offboard and all the security and all the kitchens and everything else. We're there to provide the entertainment, but we're much much the same as anybody else. We're guests. So Alan, you were going to jump in at one point.
Yeah, no, we're a customer of the cruise line, and we rental the cabin so we could put our event on. And then it's up to us to decide how we want to do the event under all the different themes that we have, whether it's the Rock and Romance cruise, the disco cruise, the flower park cruise, country music cruise, sultry cruise. But we get the boat, like Mike said, 20, 24 months out. We need it way in advance because we not only need the right week, we need a week that, as Mike said, we load in so much equipment that it's so much easier when we can load it in the week before and have it on. So that first night, we can get a big act on the main stage because we had preloaded so equipment. We can have the pool stage set up, the other rooms around the boat that we add so much staging on. If we can have that, we can be working on it. If we're sailing on a Saturday at 5 o'clock, when the other cruise is coming in on Friday night, our guys are on the deck and around the boat starting to set up our staging and everything, so that first day goes so smooth. So it's important that we find that week that we have that load in time and all the setup time that we need. And then, as Mike said, we take the concept and we develop the concept around the music, the theme, who we think our customer is, who the music fan is that we think will appreciate this, and try to build the experience around that time period and that music so that we can go from the biggest act to the smallest act we bring on, carrying that theme and that thread of this is the 70s rock and roll experience from the minute you walk on the boat to the minute you get off. Every room you go to, every bar you go to, every event you go to gives you a chance to go back and enjoy the music of that era, the style of that music performed in many different ways by many different artists.
And you've said it, you've both said it for your individual cruises and collective cruises that, it's important that, and certain cruises lend themselves more to this concept, but generally it works that you really want to transport the guest, to what you're talking about, not just physically from location to location, but mentally, when they step off that gangway onto the vessel, they're in the moment, they're immersed in whatever that experience is. And I think that's a huge, it's easy to look over sometimes when you're thinking about, do I book a regular cruise? Do I book this cruise or that cruise? And I think that's the magic of charter cruising, to a certain extent, musical cruising.
We want to take you back to when that music was so important to you, when you grew up, to whatever age it was that this music was so important. We want to take you back to that time period and have you get the joy that the music had the first time around when you heard it again in your life, and make you hopefully feel young again in that same thrilling time when you turned the radio on and heard that great Foreigner song, or you heard that great Grand Funk song or the Great America song. We want you to feel that again.
Love it. Now, Mike or Alan, either one of you, so you are a customer of the cruise line. You sign a contract, as you were saying, Mike, with the cruise line. You've now locked in a week, anywhere from 20 to 24 months out. Will you walk us through a little bit of the timeline in terms of, and I'm not asking this right, postponing or moving a cruise is not an easy thing. I think it's sometimes we get lost. I'm trying to think very simply here, having been in the business for over 20 years myself. Why don't you just move it to next month? you know,
All
we
right.
seemingly view it as a simple move at times when in reality it's epic what goes
First of
into
all,
it.
we would love to be able to have that kind of
Yeah,
flexibility
right.
completely on our own, but it's much like, you know, building a house or having a wedding or something like that. It's you've signed a contract, they've taken that week and they've given it to you, and it cannot be changed without their permission. Now, we've had really good relationships with all the charter companies, but Celebrity in this case, and they're great people and we like them a lot. But you know, they're running a big business, multi-billion-dollar business, and they just don't allow us to move things around. They don't allow us. I mean, they go so far as approving our staging, the
Oh,
logistics of our
yeah.
staging at the pool. They measure it. They have safety come in, and so moving a ship requires, you know, 10 different levels of moving a timing of a ship requires a bunch of different levels of approval, and so it's a negotiation as though you're starting from scratch. And again, we have a good relationship with them, but they're deliberate, and it's not something they do easily. And obviously, in this case, we faced with unusual circumstances where it took us a little bit of while to figure out what we wanted to do. And then when we had a bit of time to talk to them about what we wanted to, you know, do with the ship and the rescheduling, and then their whole approval process of contracts and amendments, and then that throws all the ports out. It throws all the ports
Yeah.
and all the artists out. And so Alan can't go back to the artists until I have a firm week. And a lot of times the artists want to know, well, where am I going? And, you know, can I fly in? Can I fly out? So we've got to kind of establish all that and then go back to the artists. And then, of course, you want to tell all the guests. And so
Yeah.
all these things kind of happen. But it starts with the amendment that the ship gives us. And that's a full-blown negotiation with them.
And that's why, and again, please correct me if I step on anything I'm not supposed to here, but if I'm not mistaken, that is why these cruises and these charters, and this is industry wide, you know, and I'm not sure if all guests know and understand that, but this is industry wide. This isn't just StarVista Live isn't the only ones postponing charters right now. Everybody is doing it, obviously, with what we're facing, and that's why people are postponing. Cruise lines aren't. I think there's a misconception that cruise lines are canceling cruises and but that's not what's happening, right? Contracts are postponed, contracts are delayed and put off. Correct? Am I?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you make a good point. They did not tear up my contract, and they kept the same contract and changed the date. So it was an amendment to the contract. There was no refund. They continued to bill me, and that's fine. We appreciate we're taking a $1 billion ship out of circulation, so we pay for it way in advance because they want to make sure that we're sailing.
Let me add one thing that we kind of skipped over.
Please.
We were the ones requesting to postpone the cruise. They had to grant us that ability. We were concerned, as everybody is, with the situation in the world and the timing of the cruise, and they had to grant us the ability to move the cruise and give us the other date. We can say, like you said, we want to move it, we want to do it, but they had to change that contract and make the amendment and allow us to do it. They didn't have to, but they did allow us to do that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right.
So it seems like it's a pretty good, it's a give or take relationship with the cruise lines. It sounds like, I mean, it sounds like, you know, obviously it's very deep in terms of the details and, you know, minutia of it, but it's also, you know, you've got to be fairly close to those folks, you know, because you guys are hand in hand trying to make major decisions that affect people's lives.
Yeah, they didn't say, here's your money back, you don't want to go. They said, oh, you don't want to go that week? Well, we're still keeping your money and you're still going to make payments. Is there another week you'd like to go that we could try to work with you on it again? Because the relationship that we have, we were able to do that, but it's not up to us. It's up to us to request, and hopefully, and in this case, they've been cooperative. And like Mike said, the relationships that we have are very good with those cruise lines, so they've been working with us.
Yeah, they're good people. I think they want to do the right thing. The only criticism I've had is they're a little deliberate. And so what I would like to do in a day, they take a month, and what I'd like to do in a week, they take 2 months. But again, as long as you get to the right place and you're dealing with good people, and they understood the situation, so it evolved. At first, I think they put their own cruises back to the end of April, then they were into June, and then they were into August and September now. So we kind of could see that writing on the wall, and we said, babe, even before you announced it, we kind of know where you're going. So let's have this conversation. So anyway, I'm pleased that, you know, they work with us, and I'm pleased we were able to come up with a solution.
And, you know, one of the things I respect immensely about, you know, you gentlemen specifically and StarVista Live as a whole is your ability to be as transparent as possible in doing these chats. And, you know, people ask questions that, you know, they just don't always know answers to, whether it's why is something postponed, why are certain decisions happening. And, you know, you guys have had some great answers thus far, not just today, but in general. And you know, we discussed, Alan, you said it a second ago that, you know, it's not like the cruise line refunded StarVista Live. So, you know, since we kind of opened that door, financially speaking, you know, guests are asking the similar question. That's one of the more popular questions we have is, well, why are certain things not? I see Carnival cruise liners, you know, cruise line X is refunding guests X amount and giving them this amount for their future cruises. And why is it different for charters, and not just StarVista, but all charters? Why is it different for you guys than it is the average guest at a cruise line?
As I said, they don't give us our money back. We bought the boat, every single cabin, and Mike bothers them like crazy, and especially in this case, since way back in March, about what's going on, what's happening in the industry, what's with the health agencies, what's the plans, what's the restrictions, and at a certain point, started to push them in a direction that we weren't comfortable going in February. And again, like I said, they had to grant us the permission to move our contract to the following year. And it wasn't, oh, we'll give you the money back. No, it's, okay, we'll take this contract and change your dates because we recognize your concerns and your worries and your fears of what's going on. And we picked a time period that we believe that will be a much safer, much happier, and this whole thing will be behind us time period. But they had to grant us that and allow us that. So they've made some changes in the payment schedule, but we're still paying on that boat. And we've tried to pass on some benefits to our customers, but we're not refunded. A charter is different than a customer who buys a cabin. They say, oh, well, you don't want to go in November? Well, you can go in February and we'll do this for you. We'll do that for you. They're saying to us, okay, we're going to be nice and allow you to move your week and make a couple slower payments, but that's what we're going to do for you. So yeah, we're treated differently than a customer that you see advertised in the newspaper with the advertising to try to get people to come back on cruises.
Yeah, I think that's very informative. You know, I think it's sometimes, you know, one of the comments you see a lot on, and it, again, not just 70s rock and romance, but you see on other charters from other cruise lines, you know, and other companies out there as well. Why don't we get money back for this, or where's the refund? And it's, I mean, you said it very simply, you're still making payments, right? You still own the ship, you still own the week. They just delayed when that week, postponed when that week is going to be.
They didn't say you can move it back a week and we'll give you extra bonuses. We'll give you extra money. Yeah. They said, no, you're going to have your same contract and we'll allow you for the week. And again, like Mike said, and Mike's the one who works on this with the boat so much, 24 months in advance, we're working on getting that week that we want. And when that cruise ship takes that boat, we say, out of the water and gives it to us, we've made that commitment. They're counting those dollars in their cash register. So they're not giving it back to us. So it's, and they haven't sold cabins for that week. They've given it to us. So it's a commitment on both sides. So we're treated differently and we're treated as a customer. We're not their partner. They don't own us. We're a customer. We're a client.
And Mike, is that the reason for a year postponement as opposed to, say, you know, a 4-month, 5-month, 6-month postponement? Most charters I'm noticing, and specifically yours as well, have gone a full year. Is it because of the simple fact of societally what we're facing with the pandemic and also trying to secure a week?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say. I think the easiest thing for the charter companies to do is to say, well, we already leased the boat out, lease the ship out in January through March, and pretty much every year we're going to do that. And so when you guys want to move, well, that's probably the most comfortable thing to move it an entire 12 months. I think the other thing was we were kind of calculating in our minds or evaluating in our minds when would the sailing be the kind of sailing that we expect to deliver to our guests. And so our guests, you know, expect to be able to go into the main theater and a full group of people. The artists will all be there, pool parties, have an environment. And again, things will be different. They're different anytime, external factors change it. But we really want to deliver that experience. And we thought, well, when's the soonest we can feel comfortable about that experience? And that was January through March. And so, A, their ships are available. B, we kind of figured out that that whole year would give us plenty of time to really make sure that the ships get it right and we get it right.
Sure.
And we see, how they evolve out of this. So those are the big factors.
Let me add to that, which Mike surely meant with the decision, the conversation that him and I had to get to here. The customer safety, the artist safety is our main concern. And then the wonderful experience and time they'll have. And this time period was chosen because we think that's when we think we'll all be safe and we can give them the experience that they've come to know from StarVista and they've come to know from the Rock and Romance Cruise, because we don't want to have to limit the fun. We don't want to limit the enjoyment. We want the artists to be comfortable to be able to give the same wonderful performance they always do, and the customers to be able to receive it and enjoy it and have that feeling on the boat of, oh, this is the best, this is the greatest. I'm thrilled this year, I want to come back next year. So the time period was chosen on when we think we can all have that feeling again.
One of the frustrating things during the time period is that we really knew what we wanted to do, and we had to wait for the ship to agree to it. And so it kind of looked like we maybe weren't doing anything, but we were working really, really hard at trying to get the right week and to put it off a year. And so, I saw people getting frustrated, and we appreciate it. We have guests, we have artists, and we have staff. And so all those people are really, really important in every sense of the word. So, we were working on rescheduling long before we were able to get that piece of paper in our hands and comfortably go out to everybody, and even the artists as well. So anyway, that was pretty much the process.
And when we got that contract or that amendment, we announced it and we started calling the artists. We could not do that beforehand.
Yeah. Well, and Alan, you kind of mentioned earlier, and Mike, you've gotten around to it as well there. I know you can't say specifically because you don't work for the cruise lines or the, whatever governing body out there might be making these decisions, but I'm hearing you're hearing, I'm sure, the exact same thing I am, that when cruising does restart, it's not going to just, I think there's this misconception that as of September, every ship is back on the ocean, every room is full. That's not what's going to happen. This is going to be a very slow roll where, cruise lines, for people watching, if you've heard the term tonnage, a cruise line has a certain amount of tonnage. There's a certain amount of ships, and each ship weighs yada, yada, yada. And it's not going to be a full tonnage relaunch. You're going to see cruise lines launch a ship or two at a time. And that ship or two that they launch at a time is likely going to have capacity limits to it. They're only going to be able to have a certain percentage of people. I assume that's kind of what you were referring to when you were saying, we want to be able to do a show lounge full of people and things like that. We're going to, to leave it where it is, we're potentially, trying to do 60% of the ship, and that's just not, you can't.
You see it in the country now with outdoor dining, 25% capacity here, 25% capacity there. We can't put on our type of experience with those kind of limitations. The cruise industry can come back and try to follow those kind of patterns to get people back to cruising and get it rolling.
Sure.
But until we can all feel comfortable to go and enjoy the Rock and Romance experience, we don't want to put it on and have people leaving that just didn't live up to what we expect from StarVista. You come on our boat, we want you to get off the boat with that same smile, that same satisfaction, that same happiness.
And if I may, Alan, when we do a postponement like this and we actually move weeks and we're talking about an entire year, how does that affect the way you have to deal with the artists and approach the artists? Because your lineup this year was fantastic. Are we looking at relatively the same lineup? How does that affect what we're looking at?
Yeah, it causes me to make about 900 phone calls. Yes, we have many of the same artists have already committed and are committing, but in the musical world, the artists are having so many
It's a long way out.
Their careers being rescheduled and postponed that some of them take a little longer to get back because they've had so many other things rescheduled and postponed and have to look at the dates and how all those things fall. But we have most of the artists, as we said, coming back, and most of them that haven't answered have said, no, I want to come back. Give me a minute to just put everything else in order, and everything else is scheduled. And the other thing that we're going to say is, because we're going to wait an extra year, we're going to make sure we add some extra stuff to make it worth the wait. It's not a planned wait. It's not something we chose to do, but since we're going to make you all wait, I got to give you something extra. So we'll find a way to do that between Mike, you, Jason, and Janine, and everybody else involved. We'll make it a little extra special that, well, I had to wait the year, but look how good this was. That's what our plan is.
Good answer. I like that. And actually, as you mentioned that, kind of along those same, a handful of questions from our newer rock and romance cruisers are all along the lines of, how do you choose artists? Do you reach out to everybody? Is it just who sticks on the wall, or how do you actually build a cruise? And that could go for either of you, Mike. I mean, you obviously are executive producer of a handful of these as well. How do you choose artists for different cruises?
Well,
I think it would be the same answer that either one of us gives. It's, we're first of all, we're Time Life, so that's our lineage, and we really know the music. We know what time, we know what songs, what artists, were evocative of the time period or the genre of music. And so you start with that. You really need to be true to like the time period and the genre. And then, and Alan can get into a little bit more depth here, but we want to make sure that we get the right artists for that right time period. We want to make sure that artists are still performing really well so that you get a great experience. We want artists that like to be on the ship. And we have artists
Good
that
citizens, as we like to call it.
they're touring. It could be the greatest artists in the world. If they don't enjoy people, it's not going to work. And then you really want to pick people that, that work that time of year. Some people take some months off, and are they in the US? So I don't know how many people you have on your list, Alan. And I mean, it's got to be hundreds and hundreds of artists. And
I talk to agents, managers, and artists, and what I try to do from the first cruises on is I want a customer to look at our lineup and like and want to see every single artist on the lineup. So we try to match it to a feeling of a time period and a genre where a customer, I don't want a customer to say, oh, gee, I like these three. I didn't like those two. I like these.
Yeah.
I want to be able to look at a lineup of 15, 16, 17 acts and say, oh, I like every one of them. I got to go. I got to see every one of them. So it's like Mike said, we try to put a Time Life package together, our CD packages that go on TV and all that music that mixes and matches so well. It's the same thing on the boat. How can I make you just want to run from room to room to see every act that's performing on the boat, because every act means something to you, and the music that every act made in that time period means something to you and still resonates with you. So that's how we try to put a lineup together. And there are artists that are not interested in sailing on a boat, are not available at the time period, even if we're asking them 18 or 16 months in advance. But the hit list that we have covers the era, the time period, and the genre, and we're constantly in contact to see who's available, who would like to do it, who's it fit their schedule, because artists deal with routing problems. They don't want to go to Fort Lauderdale if they're coming from Alaska. They want to be somewhere near the Southwest, so it's an easy commute for them. So there's a lot of things that go into an artist decision. But the happiest thing for us is the artists that come on our boat, in most cases, say, you know what? I didn't know that theme cruising was so much fun, but call me, I'm coming back. Look at Foreigner. They're coming back because they enjoyed it so much. As our customers like to come back, more and more artists who experience this with us say, not only do they enjoy it because of what we do and provide for them, they enjoy being with those customers. They enjoy being with those fans. They get off the boat and they had a good time. That's important. And
they love our audience. Our audience, they just love. They can walk in the room and say, I know this is going to be a lot of fun because these are real fans. And I think a lot of the artists are really, they do casinos sometimes where people's attention is split. They come on the ship and people are there to see them and really excited. So that's a big, big factor. The second, third, fourth year, it gets easier.
Yeah. And it's like when you're on stage and you see an audience, and the audience loves you, that's wonderful. But one of the greatest lines that I use for these artists is, you're going to spend a week on a boat with the people you grew up with. These are really your friends. These are people who made your career. These are the people who made you who you are. They want to say thank you to you for the music you gave them. It's nice to say thank you to them for helping me having got to achieve the success that I've had. Let's share that time together. And the artists feel it. And they get off the boat and they feel the customers. They feel that mutual enjoyment.
Now, on that same token, Alan, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any wish list of artists that you just haven't been able to get yet for whatever reason that you wish you could?
Yeah, For which cruise? I have them for each and every cruise.
Just this one. We're rocking romancing right now.
Fleetwood Mac would be a great one. Doobie Brothers, right combination. So, yes, there's many acts that I have on the list because I am number one a music fan, and there's many acts that I want to see on this boat. And I keep trying. I don't give up. I keep calling them every year. I'm a hard guy to say no to because I'm calling you back.
And another one on this, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with this one because we've discussed it a little bit. Have we considered, has StarVista Live considered for any of the charters or the cruises doing any land events?
It's something we always look. Mike and I sit and talk long and long hours about what things we can do to bring the music that we love and enjoy to share with the customers in more ways. Whether that's another cruise or potentially a land date at some point. It isn't something that's out of the question. It isn't something that's exactly on our list right now. I mean, we are involved in one land event, which is Abbey Road on the River. We're part owners, and they're in Jefferson, right outside of Louisville. Memorial Day, they weren't this year because of the situation we're all in. But we are part of that, and we at the proper time may be.
I can speak out of class a little bit and tell everyone watching or everyone that's going to be watching that I've been part of a trip or two where we've gone to look at some locations and some potential spots where you could do it. I think it comes with its own laundry list of complications and trials and tribulations certainly right now, but I can tell everyone watching or that's going to be watching, it's absolutely on your radar. And it's something you've looked at, but it's not as simple. I think it's just throwing.
We've probably done about 5 or 6 site visits over the years, different places, and kind of looking for the right place and what's available that time of year, and so it's on the radar screen, so to speak. But
right.
When you're building these charters, one of the common there's a lot of different types of cruisers. The people that take the music cruises are taking it for the music. It goes without saying. But you also get those within that are very particular about the ports they go to. And I know you guys spend a lot of time. I don't know if people understand the whiteboards and I've seen it. I've been in this war room many times. That goes into all of us and you specifically making decisions on what ports of call to go to and what years to go to them. And Mike, you alluded earlier to needing a certain type of port in the middle. Would you talk a little bit about how destinations are chosen?
Sure. Well, yeah, the first thing we look at is where we've been in the last 2 to 3 years. We try to mix it up, and then we usually anchor it with one big midpoint because we have half the artists will get on, or a group of them will get on, and another group will get off. A lot of them have alternative dates, so we try and keep them out for a couple of days, but if they need to get to the next date. So we need a big midpoint. We need a midpoint that has hotel availability, that has airline availability, that the port is near the hotels and near the airport so that people aren't coming all the way across country. And that limits it to a certain number. We've got to be able to get to that port and back within the 7 days or 5 days in one case. And then once we get that anchor port, we start to fill in other things that we haven't done. Some of the charter companies have private islands that are really fun and beautiful to do. Sometimes we have other ports that are near the midpoint port. But for instance, Key West is a place that we do like to go on some of our cruises. Because some of the artists will take their bus down, get off the bus and play there, and then go back home. But Key West has this weird anomaly where there's only 2 ports downtown. And if you stay past 5 o'clock on one of the downtown ports, you have to buy out the sunset rights of the hotel that's there. So your ship is in the way of the hotel, and the hotel makes you write a check to them. I couldn't believe it when they said go, but it's a sunset right you have to buy. But those are the crazy complexities you have in this. The tender ports, we don't want to do tender ports.
Is now the time to get you started on the Jones Act?
Yeah, that's right. Every time you want to get
by the way, on and off. It's a real thing.
Plus one other thing, there are some artists who don't sail with us, and we need to find a port that we can stay late at night so the artists can fly in and do 2 shows and get off because they have dates the night before and the night after that they want to get to. So we'll fit in their schedule, but then we need a port that works for that schedule. So there are a lot of conditions that we need to meet to do that schedule, to do the proper itinerary.
I think there's an interesting sweet spot too that we discuss all the time, and it's interesting because it's different for every cruise, and that's sea days versus port days. How many sea days versus how many port days? Some of these cruises want 3 or even 4 port days. Some want 4 sea days. It's really interesting, that balance, and how you work that through.
We have a malt shop cruise. We could leave Fort Lauderdale, park
7 days.
3 miles out and stay there for 7 days and come back. They just want music, rock and roll, and shows. They don't care where we go or what they see, just the music.
Yeah. It's really intriguing too, because I think people don't forget. I think as they go through it, the sea day is the opportunity to do more, right? The sea day is the opportunity to put on more concerts, more events, more Q&As, more cooking shows, more time with the artists. Port days are more time to breathe and see the beach maybe, or travel internationally. But you took the cruise for the music, but you're also taking a cruise, so you want to see stuff and go do stuff. So it's interesting to, alongside you, read a lot of the feedback we get every year. I mean, for every person that says too many ports, the next person says not enough ports. It's a clean balance between both sides.
Well, we also learn over time, interacting with the guests and looking at the surveys. And again, you're right. Half the people say one thing and half the people say something else. Then you try to figure out, what can I do to, make more people happy.
Yeah.
But you also get a sense of the guests themselves. Certain ports they like more than other ports. So some people are a late night crowd and some people are a little bit earlier crowd. So your scheduling has to be tailored to that as well, so that you're giving people something that's in their comfort zone. All those factors go into it.
We spend, as you know, Jason, because you're involved, hours and hours and hours going over those schedules, those plans every day, every minute, every room, every part of the ship.
There's a lot. There's nothing like seeing it come to fruition, and when you put in all the effort and 2 years of building a charter. I'm sure for you guys more than anybody, there's nothing like seeing your baby actually come to life. I'm going to slip backwards a little bit because there's a few questions popping up here on the chat, and there's also some folks I saw that asked about it. It's really early to even attempt to ask this, and I know that, but a lot of folks are wondering about what type of restrictions we might see on the ship. Are you privy to any of that in terms of social distancing, in terms of protecting, are you responsible for that? Forgive the direction of that question, but people are kind of curious how the protection of folks will work under COVID.
There's some informal information that we get from the charter companies. Nothing is official until they issue an official announcement, but you can kind of read between the lines a little bit and see the evolving. First of all, we don't have a control over it at all. It will be set by the charter companies in accordance with the CDC and the industry itself. So likely the ships are all going to have the same, very similar protocols with some slight differences, and they will be something that evolve over time. The feeling I'm getting is that this fall will be a very light footprint. Things like Alaska are out. People aren't going to Alaska this year. Canada, I think, is out, and I think they're into September, starting up again. Will they start with, a third of the people on board? I can't say it's a third, it's 40%, but it's something significantly less than the full. They'll probably go for a few days at a time. And then as the year, you go into the new year, I think it'll be a more substantial number of people. Again, if the facts suggest something else, then that won't happen. But they're thinking that will be a more substantial percentage of the total. And then the deeper you get into 2021, the more it's going to look like it always has, with lots of changes. I'm sure there'll be, some testing on board and temperatures, and there'll be some all kinds of health and safety protocols that are put in place. But it'll look and feel pretty much like that, I think, is the plan at this point. But again, they haven't even issued their first set of guidelines, but that's what they say to me, kind of off the record.
And I worked in the industry, before working with you gentlemen and StarVista Live. I worked within the cruise industry itself for almost 16 years, I guess, actually on board working on ships, part of the cruise line, and then I was corporate at a specific cruise line, and so I've worked in and out of the industry my entire adult life. One of the things and I'm going to say the words bothered me a little bit, only because of the way it's kind of come across is the angst that's been created around cruising and illness. You know, I get that it's a small environment. I get that it's, you know, everyone pressed into one small area. But I was there when norovirus was a thing. You know, norovirus was a gastrointestinal illness that became known as the cruise ship illness. And when things hit, you know, cruise lines get blamed for a lot of stuff, or a lot of onus gets put. We'll never cruise again. We can't cruise again. And for those that are, you know, immunocompromised, or those that are truly concerned about it, I understand that. But I'm also speaking to everyone when I say you're going to see an immense and incredible and very thorough response from the cruise lines. They are highly, highly regulated. And I mean, you're going to see, you're going to feel incredibly safe to cruise. I'm 100% confident in that. I have zero concern with how they will respond eventually. And I think a lot of it, what we're seeing, you know, speaking to my friends in the industry, and, you know, Mike Allen, I'm sure you guys have just as many contacts as I do, but you know, is terminal based, you know, preventing the illness from even getting on the ship. It's not about catching it when it's on board. It's about preventing it from ever entering the vessel, or even entering the terminal, you know. And so I really think, you know, and I'm kind of diatribing on this because we did have a bunch of questions about how people are going to be kept safe. I'm really, confidence is a strong word, but I'm encouraged to see what the cruise lines are doing so far. And I really think you're going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of work being done out in the terminal area itself and pre-terminal.
And that's why we pushed it back till February of 22, because we think all of this will be worked out, and we will be able to have our customers come on the boat feeling safe, secure, and being able to enjoy the same experience that we've always given them in the past.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really does come down to that. You know, I think that as you're looking at this whole thing, ultimately, and Mike, you and I specifically had a bunch of conversations around this, the health and safety of the guests is the first thing. I mean, there's no other thing. There's no other thing. There's no other, oh, well, an artist can't go that week. That doesn't play into this. You know, it was a tough decision made on all sides, but for the right reasons. And I you know, I'm a homer, but I commend you for making a not, you know, or for at least pushing the cruise line and having those conversations.
It was a painful decision, and it was incredibly disappointing to make it, but we knew we had to make this decision, and we knew the ship had to go along with it as well. So we were always going to that place, but again, it was with a little bit of disappointment because you spend 20 months planning it, and you sure love to go, but you can't go until it's right, and that's the bottom line. When it's right, we'll go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amen to that. And you know, you actually, StarVista has suspended all January cruises. I mean, I know this is later than January, but all the early year cruises for 2021 have been postponed, correct?
January and February, all our January and February cruises have been postponed.
Yeah, I think we repositioned 6 of them probably in the aggregate, somewhere around 6. So yeah.
It's a major disruption. I mean, the industry's, you know, it's a major disruption to this industry. That's goes without saying. You know, a question that I've been asked a bunch privately and a couple in this chat here, and another decision that goes into these cruises, and this is now moving to the actual building of the cruises themselves. Speaking of 50-50, why do some cruises at StarVista Live have assigned seats and some cruises at StarVista Live do not have assigned seats?
We send a survey out at the end of our cruises, and we ask our customers a lot of questions over the years. And some of our cruise ships, passengers, I got to have assigned seats. I got to have assigned seats. And some of these rocket moments came back with, we don't want assigned seats, particularly. And a couple of other cruises came back, which we thought they would come back with wanting assigned seats. The majority of people said no. They like that concert feeling. They like to be able to get in line, talk, have a drink, get ready for the show, and each night decide how early they want to come, sit in the front, sit in the back, change their seats. So, you know, we try to please and respond to what our customers ask, but we do ask the questions so we can try to give the majority what they would like.
We were very surprised. You know, I really felt like it was going to be an easy decision to make because I always like assigned seating. It just gives people certainty. And then it came back and it wasn't at all overwhelming. In fact, it was pretty strongly the other way, that people didn't want to, perhaps they want to see their favorite artist. And when they want to see their favorite artist, they're willing to wait online. There's upsides and downsides to both of them. When we listen to people and and something like that, we're happy to do whatever the guests want.
Right.
But I think that's a great example, in terms of StarVista doing a great job listening to guests, because yes, there are pros and cons to both. As someone that's involved with both of you in programming a lot of your cruises, assigned seating takes out, it removes 100% of the angst in, well, do they have time to get from here to here, and why is this too close to this, and now how are they possibly going to get from dinner to this show and to that show, and it solves the problem of, well, I can only see 30 minutes of the smaller event because then I got to get in line for my, assigned seating solves so many of those little problems. But to your point, people, hey, tonight is America in the main theater, and I'm going to be first in line for that. So if I have to be 2 hours, 4 hours early, then so be it. I have
At
that.
one point, I was really determined to do it, and then I said, I stand corrected when we saw the surveys. I said, I don't want to give people something they don't want. I know some people do want it, so I feel conflicted about it, but the majority came the other way, and you had to respect that. And it was not close. It was pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, that was
because if it was close, I would have kept arguing.
It was surprising. It was surprising, and they were comfortable with this environment. And what our customer tells us is what we try to listen to.
Yeah,
it's interesting. In terms of all of the, obviously with postponements and things like this happening, and this is kind of what I like to call a softball question, because I'm impressed by this. You've seen a wonderful, wonderful response from guests overall. I'm privy to some of the intercommunications from StarVista Live, and with the postponement of the cruises and with things happening, there was an initial cancellation thing where people were trying to back out of cruises out of fear and concern, and all rightfully so. But you've seen solid. This is tacky, but you've seen great sales. People are returning quickly to the cruises, and now that you've postponed a year. You talk a little bit about
people stuck through it. People kind of realized, I think some people realized we were going to reposition, reschedule. And then lots of other people said, hey, I'm coming back now that we have more time. And, after 10 years and 50 of these cruises in cumulative, and probably 10 on our oldest one, we become friends with lots of people, and they call us and email and text us. And, we get a lot of feedback even before we do the surveys. But it's fun. We appreciate it. But people have been really, they can't wait to get out. And the artists, Alan, you're talking to artists every day, make a comment about how much they want to get out and play in front of people again when the time is right.
Yeah, I think there was a general sigh of relief saying, oh, good. Now we're moving back to a time period that I think it's all going to be all right. I was a little nervous, like we were nervous to go. We had a cruise this November. We were, so I think that there was a sigh of relief. But the artists who are not working, not seeing audiences, not seeing fans, can't wait to get back out there. That's what they do for a living. They don't have other jobs. This isn't a nighttime part-time job. They want to play music and perform.
So, that's fair enough. I think a lot of it too is, you have different, stepping back into payment a little bit, you have, different payment plans, different cruises, and different understandings. And some guests pay in full, and some guests do this and that in different ways. But I know that could you talk a little bit about how with the cruise moving back a year, most of the cruises have gone to new installments, new payment plan options. And I think this is really great. And I've seen a lot of positive feedback and heard a lot. Could you talk a little bit about that decision and what that allows the guests to do?
Well, the boat, again, changed some of the payment situation with us, not a lot, but a little. And we tried to pass that benefit on to the customer where they would pay over a longer period of time. So if they're paying monthly, it'll be a lower monthly payment, and give them the same advantage that we've gotten from the boats with a little delay and a little bit of spread on the payments.
Got it. So in the monthly, I think, allows people to feel a little more comfortable as well, obviously, with the cruise being a certain amount of time out, and with the uncertainty of life right now, let's be fair,
Right.
and everything around us. A great question I had from a guest in terms of programming cruises, and we can all elaborate on this. Is there a way to keep artists, or why do you have some of the events overlap? Why not have everything be free to everyone all the time?
Because every room doesn't hold every customer that is on the boat. Main theater holds half the customers that are on the boat. So you want to see the main theater acts, that's your headliners. We got to have an early show and a late show. So if you eat late, you see them early. If you eat early, you see them late. But we get everybody in to see those artists. The other rooms don't fit that many people, so we got to have it spread out where if somebody's singing America at 6:30, we have enough things going on around the boat. The other half population that's on the boat can see somebody in the Constellation room, can see somebody in the Rendezvous room, can see somebody at the pool or somebody in the bars. So we try to have enough competitive programming that if you love so and so in this theater, you get a chance to see him either early, late, or at the pool. But if you want to see somebody else, you have some other opportunities to see them spread around the pool. So the programming is based on the size of the room, where the artist best can perform their music from, what type of show. Some artists are great at the pool, some are great in the main theaters, some wouldn't be great at the pool, some are great in Constellation. So it's a lot of thought process in how to program it so all of our customers have something to choose between doing besides eating to enjoy this great music and have a chance to see the artist either 7:45 in Constellation or 11 o'clock at the pool, so and so. So a lot of thought to try to give you those options and that variety of choices.
You know, and I think a common battle too, that the one major constriction that we have is we can't just build a bigger room. You know, we can't just expand the size of said second venue or other venue. You know, the ship is what it is. Your venues are what they are. And you know, actually, that's Mike, if you don't mind, or Alan, either one of you. You know, I've gone with both of you to look at other ships. You know, we've gone cruise line to cruise line, ship to ship, looking for what fits different cruises and different itineraries and different, you know, artists the best. Talk a little bit about the decision making within the actual cruise lines and the ships within the line.
Well, we've been on, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 different charter companies, and we've come down to Celebrity and Holland America, frankly, of the two that we work with. There, the quality of the product is great, the ship is great, the service is great for the most part. I mean, we always, you know, find some things that we wish they did better and did differently, but by and large, when you A/B it against other ships, they come out at the top. They do a really good job, and we've been working with them a long time, so they know the feeling and the pacing, and they make sure they have enough bar staff in the right places. Now, again, it doesn't always work out that way, and occasionally we have every morning we get together with them and kind of debrief on the day before. But we've honed in on those 2 charter companies because they've done a great job with us. I think what also has happened is that you know, we've toured other ships. Lots of times, a bigger ship has a smaller main theater. It's a strange. The newer the ship, the bigger the ship, the smaller the main theater, and so you'd have to do 3, 4, 5 main theater shows, and some of the artists have to do, and they just wouldn't do that many shows. And so
I don't mean to interrupt, Mike, but I think that's an important point for people to, I think that's a common misconception, is that, you know, well, there's these mega cruise lines out there, but they're bigger cruises, but they're smaller venues across the board.
There's 2 downsides there. The smaller main theater, which would mean, you know, you'd have to split things up, and you'd have kind of really complicating, and it does lose some intimacy. When you have 2,000 guests on board and you have a certain number of artists, you're going to run into them in the gym and in the lead-up deck, and so that's fun too. So you got to be careful you don't, you know, build a city and make it complicated. But we look at all the ships. We tour ships all the time. Alan and I have been out, you know, 3, 4 times a year on different ships trying to see what would work, even if it's for 2 days. You just can't walk through it and see it. You really have to see it while it's sailing. And so we'll go 2 days and then fly back home, see if there's something else out there. But we kind of feel like we're in a pretty good direction. And you have to use the ship in ways. I mean, it was really clever, you know, the way we used the main theater on Disco, or the main dining room Disco. Studio 55 at night with the floor lighting up, and you know, we never did that on any other ship, so we kind of were always pushing the envelope.
It really is
fantastic.
It's really one of the coolest things. And you know, for anyone watching, by the way, the dates, just so I get them right, the dates for 2022 are February 19th to 26th for Rock and Romance, and then Disco February 26th to March 3rd, directly following. So just so everyone.
It would be a great It's going to be a great 12 days.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be a party for sure. Last couple of questions here, and then we'll get out of it. We're approaching that hour. Have you ever considered, and you kind of touched on this earlier, Mike, there's kind of for either of you here, there's a charter window. Most charters are January to March because other cruise lines, the cruise lines reposition. Why not do Europe or Alaska or other itineraries for charters?
We like we said before, related to late events, we are constantly looking what else we could do to put on our type of events. And we've talked about Europe many times. Mike and I have looked into that. And Mike just went on an Alaska cruise last year to check it out to see if it would be something for us. So we're constantly looking and constantly researching what would be best. But again, as Mike said earlier in the first part of this webinar, we have to work within the cruise strips restrictions and what they allow us to do and where they allow us to rent a boat and how they will work with us in that manner. But
yeah, I think like in Alaska it becomes interesting because Alaska is a summertime, obviously. And so if you want to take a winter vacation, you're not taking a winter vacation in Alaska. So we'd have to go sometime in April through September. And lots of people take their summer vacation. The weather's really good here. That's a factor. I think, Europe, I think we've looked at Europe and we're kind of interested in doing as well. But logistically, moving all the equipment over there and all the artists, where are they from? And so I think we'll do some of those things now that we're, rescheduled, so to speak. And I think we'll go back to some of those things we dug into pretty deeply.
I think it's interesting too. And again, I've been out of the day-to-day cruise ship industry for quite a while now, but still, at least then, and I could be speaking out of turn now, but at least then, cruise lines make the vast majority of their annual profits in Europe and Alaska. So they're also very protective of those dates. They're not, I know that when I worked for the cruise lines, they were not just jumping to give Alaska and Europe days away to charters I mean, the price goes way up on the ship and a lot of things change,
it's when they allow us to rent the boat.
Yeah. And obviously, I think it goes without saying, one of the final questions that we had many of was, we appreciate you pushing back a year. What if, goodness, God forbid, we get closer to and we find we're still in some type of situation? Understandably, that's unlikely. But what if we are still facing COVID? What if we're still facing restrictions? How do you just delay again? I mean, do we postpone again? And I know there's no easy answer, but
as we said, the safety of our customers and the artists are our main concern, and decisions we will make will always take that into it as a major factor. We did it this year. We'll look at the world as we go, and hopefully looking ahead with a brighter attitude and a brighter vision that it's going to be great by February 2022.
Absolutely, I totally agree. That's a number one, or frankly, there's no other guiding principle other than that. On the flip side, I look back 2-3 months ago and I look as of today, and I look forward 2-3 months. Things are slowly evolving towards a place that I think is going to make us all more comfortable. So I think we remain optimistic, but we're never going to do something that puts people at risk. It's just, not the way we are.
Well, gentlemen, that's about an hour, and I know that you both have many things to do, and our guests obviously do as well. Alan, anything you'd like to share with the folks before we get out of here?
I'm going to miss seeing you. I want you all to stay safe and healthy. Get that old CDs, turn on the radio, listen to that rock and romance music. Think of us, and we'll think of you, and we can't wait to get back together again. And when we do, it's going to be something special.
Amen. Mike, how about you, sir?
Well, I wish we didn't have extra time, but now that we have extra time, we will be spending it figuring out how do we jam more music into 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and keep you up all night, so that we look forward to reducing your sleep for that week as much as we can. So, but everybody be safe, and we hope to see you soon.
That's the challenge the three of us will take with us to make your year very worthwhile for what we're going to give you back.
Amen. And for all guests that are watching this right now, on your control panel over there under your under the chat section, there is some links for customer support. There's links for email addresses and also some frequently asked questions. If you have a lot of these things are discussed in there, a lot of the things we've talked about today are covered in the FAQs. And if you have a specific question, please feel free to reach out. And again, I want to reiterate that if we did not answer a specific question that you submitted, remember, this is a general forum. A lot of you are very, very specific, and we appreciate that. We appreciate your candor, and we'll do our very, very best, if we have not already, to get back to you to get to those questions. All I would add to what Mike and Alan said is, you know, to echo Mike, please be healthy, please be safe, and you know, we're in a trying time right now. Be patient with each other. I think that's a key right now. I keep seeing all these things, you know, launch out about people angry about this and yelling at someone about a mask or not a mask. Let's try to practice some compassion, practice a little empathy, and let's be kind to one another. This is we need it now as much as ever. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in and spending your precious time with us. And I very much so want to thank Mike and Alan for their candor and taking the time to be here and share a little behind the scenes for 70s rock and romance. To all of you, be well, take care. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.